DAC7.
I don't want to talk about this anymore.
We've talked about it, presented about it, memed about it, screamed about it, webcasted about it.
Let's talk about something else.
Okay, the riskiest part of this topic has not really been covered in nearly enough depth, and this is the video to fix that. But before diving in, let's do a very quick recap. As many of you already know, the world has gone on a bit of a tax data binge lately, requiring platforms and businesses to share certain types of data. Within the European Union, this is especially true. Why? Because there's existing obligations such as EC sales listing, as well as e-invoicing and digital reporting requirements in some countries. But there's also new upcoming legislation such as the Digital Services Act, the DSA, CSOP, and of course DAC7. This is already on top of the existing bilateral agreements with certain rideshare and accommodation providers, but also on top of existing legislation such as USTG 18 in Austria. These obligations are overlapping in data sets, and as this has led a lot of people within the community to start asking, what on earth are you actually looking for?
What do you want? What do you want?
It's not that simple.
What do you want?
They want DAC7, which is the 7th iteration of the European Council Directive on Administrative Cooperation and Exchange of Information in the field of taxation. DAC7 is the European equivalent of the US 1099 form, for those of you who know what that is. For those who don't, DAC7 is a piece of legislation that requires digital platforms, in this case think Uber, Amazon, eBay, Etsy, TaskRabbit, to annually share data on the revenue generating activities of platform sellers, in other words, the people that use their platforms. The directive targets platform operators facilitating relevant activities, which includes the provision of personal services, the sale of goods, the rental of property. And if you read the first chapter of this book, it actually goes quite deep into the scope of the directive and highlights some of the challenges. And who's exempt? Well, platforms that don't necessarily see the underlying transactions, are not facilitating those transactions, and simply just don't have enough information to be able to report. This can include companies like Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace specifically, because they don't actually handle the underlying transaction at the end of the day. Then there's just the pure payment services providers who don't have access to nearly enough information, but those companies have to be on the lookout for CSOP, which is coming in 2024. DAC7 is primarily aimed at direct taxes, income taxes, but here's an interesting fact. Guess who predominantly in-house is responsible for picking this up? That's right, the indirect tax guys. That's probably because the directive concerns near transaction level detail, and that is something that our direct tax colleagues are pretty much allergic to.
What? Toodaloo, motherfucker. Hey,
Only joking, guys. Okay, but the data shared is pretty extensive, from personal information to transaction level details about the rental properties, about how much you're earning, what commissions are being charged to you. While the directive doesn't require governments to ask you about your favorite dessert or Disney movie, it is very, very personal. And this is where we come to the real issue. It's not tax, it's privacy. The type of information that's being collected under the directive is really, really, really sensitive. I mean, you've got dates of birth, place of birth, tax ID, social security number, financial account information, as in your actual bank accounts, the amounts that you're earning. This is the type of data that typically is masked, obfuscated, put into special locations that you cannot extract specific volumes of it at a single time. This is the type of data that is protected very, very heavily. And now what's happening under the directive, in order to prepare it for submission, it's being, rather than being split up, it's being aggregated, then combined and processed in order to be ready for submission. This is really putting a bullseye on the company's back. Clearly, this is something that Privacy Council is going to have a great interest in, but the time remaining to figure out how you're going to extract, aggregate, and then submit this data without breaking some form of privacy legislation is running out. The unfortunate thing is that to get help in this area, nobody really wants to touch this data. No one.
So, what you're telling me is that the music is about to stop, and we're going to be left holding the biggest bag of odorous excrement ever assembled in the history of capitalism.
That wasn't the perfect analogy, but it's close enough. You get what I'm saying. And to add on top of this, I think Privacy Council, when they come out of hibernation in February 2024, once you file this, they're going to have a couple of questions. And I predict there's going to be two types of Privacy Council. One, let's call them the Gandalf.
Is it secret? Is it safe?
And then there's the second type.
Is it safe? Yes, it's safe. It's very safe. It's so safe you wouldn't believe it.
For those of you interested in taking a deeper dive into this topic, I've left some links in the description, so feel free to explore those. If you have any questions, you can always contact me directly. And now I'm going to leave you with Donny, the first-time entrepreneur, dropping some hard truths about taxes.
Oh my gosh. Where's all your money gone, Donny?
Taxes. 9, 10, 11. Let me fix my houses. It's okay. It's part of the game. No, it's not. It's not fun. It's not fun to what? It's the worst part of the game. It's what? Taxes.